Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. A heaping helping of Albaz wasn't enough for you, huh? You had to come crawling back to learn about Michael from Vsauce and their adventures with edgy Pokemon, crying mermaids, and mecha capitalists, huh? Well, I guess if anyone is gonna sate your bottomless need for Yu-Gi-Oh! Story mode, it's gonna have to be me. Not like anyone else is handling it. But first, we have to handle some updates. Turns out the Vsauce lore also doesn't have any new archetypes to interact with. In fact, looking at the set list, it looks like Photon Hypernova doesn't have any new archetypes in it at all, which is fine by me. I've been thinking it was about time we focused on updating older themes to bring them up to snuff, rather than continuing to try and reinvent the wheel. And no, chaos does not count, because I've seen the prog memes. I know how much you all are tired of seeing chaos. So let's do a quick review of the archetypes so far, cover all the new cards in the Vsauce storyline, then see what new developments for the lore they have in store. It's time to captivate with Kashtira. Again. But before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy what I do. Once we get to 40k, we're doing our next 5Ds video on Leo and Luna, and every sub helps. Also check out my Discord, where this statement was said, and I'm not gonna say it's intellectually true, but it is emotionally. And my Twitch, where you can watch me put all my lessons to the test live with viewer duels. And if you want to go that extra mile, join my Patreon where you can get my videos early and help us reach these video milestones. Thank you all so much for watching, and now, back to the video. So, quick recap on the theme formerly known as Kshatriya Law. There are a bunch of level 7 psychic monsters that can special summon themselves from the hand if you control no monsters. Each one could search a particular kind of card in the theme, spells for unicorn, traps for ogre, and monsters for Fenrir, and that's why it's worth 60 bucks, at time of recording. We have some other spells and traps that help summon out our big monsters, all topped off by an Xyz that summons more Kashtira, while being an honorary Ojama, sealing off zones, both monster and spell and trap, whenever your opponent's cards are banished. It's a pretty wild core of effects, but as a pure deck, it doesn't really have the same ceiling as the current Sprite tier format. Or just tier if the exchange of spirit cards have anything to say about it. But that hasn't stopped everyone and their moms from jamming 3 copies of Fenrir into their deck because, let's face it, we all still have a Pinkertop-shaped hole in our hearts, and unfortunately, Guan Yun just doesn't make the cut. But now we have a whole new wave of Kashtira cards that help flesh out the theme, and their methods of bolstering their ranks are, gruesome to say the least. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's cover Vsauce's new dimensional counterpart, Kashtira Riseheart, a level 4 Fire Warrior monster with 1500 attack and 2100 defense, and if you control a Kashtira monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. Also, you can't special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn, except Xyz monsters. And during the main phase, if this card was normal or special summoned this turn, you can banish a Kashtira card from your deck, except a copy of itself, to banish the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck face down. And if you do, this card's level becomes 7. Okay, more ways to banish mill your opponent. I wonder when Runic Kashtira will be a thing. Anyway, Riseheart makes it super easy to make Shangri-Ira, or any rank 7 you desire, because it doesn't provide any restriction beyond the Xyz lock. And as it turns out, a lot of our cards trigger when banished, so it's a great way to get those online as well. So all in all, it's a great extender for the theme, and adds to our stable of pretty anime boys. Now if only they knew how to draw different faces, then we'd be in business. We've also got some more level 7s to add to our roster, and it looks like we're outsourcing. Scareclaw Kashtira is a level 7 Earth Psychic monster with 0 attack and 2600 defense, and during any main phase as a quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, banish a Kashtira or Scareclaw card from your hand or grave. This card can attack while in defense position, using its defense for damage calculation, very nice, and while on the field, negate the effects of any opponent's monster that battles with your Kashtira or Scareclaw monsters until the end of the turn. This new monster lacks the consistency boosting of the original Kashtira, but having a way to summon more of them while having monsters on the field is amazing. Now you're not as tied to Kashtira Birth to actually get your plays off the ground. Not to mention that Scareclaw now have an actual body to play without having to solely rely on the Link 3. And the effect negation is, okay, if a little slow. But hey, evil Cerberus Clifford here is doing their best, so cut him some slack. Tearlament's Kashtira is a level 7 water psychic monster with 2300 attack and 1200 defense, and has the same summoning effect as Scareclaw Kashtira, though it has you banishing either a Kashtira or a Tearlament's card. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can send the top 3 cards of either player's deck to the grave, And if this card is sent to the grave by a card effect, you can send the top 2 cards of your deck to the grave, making this the Light Swarm Minerva of the theme. Good grief, this is a mill machine! And while having another level 7 in Kashtira is very helpful, this plays very well with Tear Laments, though it can only be used as fusion material for Rukalos on theme. But having more cards in grave means more targets for the crossover Kashtira to banish for their summon, and if any more themes in this storyline show up, they'll undoubtedly be added to that list, so more fodder ain't too bad. Just make sure you don't tear through your deck too quickly. And wouldn't you know it, Riseheart needs their own extra deck form as well. So now we get Kashtira Riseheart, a rank 7 Dark Machine Xyz monster with 3000 attack and defense, requiring 3 level 7 monsters as material. However, once per turn, if Kashtira Shangri-Ira activated any of its effects this turn, you can Xyz summon Kashtira Riseheart by using any Kashtira monster you control, transferring its materials over. While on the field, any card sent to the grave is banished instead, and once per chain, each time any number of cards are banished, attach 1 banished card to this card as material. And once per turn, as a quick effect, you can detach 3 material from this card, then target a card on the field and banish it face down. Wow, this is rough! It's a walking macrocosmos that has the bad habit of scooping up material and giving you quick effect banishing face down removal. And Shangri-Ira only requires 2 level 7s at minimum, so as long as you can get it to activate the zone occupying effect, you can slap a Riseheart on top of it to make a 3 material version. It's so good. Not to mention this is basically the best Baryon card ever printed. What, you think I'm off my rocker? It's a rank 7 monster, so look at its color scheme and tell me this isn't Chaos Xyz Baryon Hope. Yeah, that's what I thought. Alright, that's all the monsters, now it's time for the new spells and traps. Kashtira Papyrus is a normal spell card that targets a Kashtira monster you control, and it special summons a Kashtira monster with a different attribute from your deck in defense position.
Also, you can't special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn except Xyz monsters.
If this card becomes banished, you can target one of your banished Kashtira cards except a copy of this card and add it to your hand. This makes summoning your rank 7s a breeze. On top of summoning your original Kashtira to search you more cards, being a way to recycle your banished Kashtira cards is pretty nifty. Remember, the Scareclaw and Tear Laments additions to the team banish cards for their summon, not just monsters, so this makes for the perfect companion to them. I've gotta say, Papyrus is a devilishly good card. Kashtira Overlap is a quick play spell that targets a monster on the field. On resolution, you banish a monster with 1500 attack and 2100 defense from your hand, grave, or that's face up on either field. And if you do, the targeted monster gains 1500 attack. And if this card is banished and you control a Kashtira monster, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls and negate its effects until the end of the turn. This makes for a pretty good banish for Riseheart's effect, nullifying a monster for the turn so it doesn't cause you any problems. And by that point, it gives you a good target to get back to your hand with Papyrus's on banish effect. As for the activated effect, it's meh. Like, I can't think of a single monster that wouldn't like a permanent 1500 attack boost, don't get me wrong, but wanting something doesn't mean it's good for you. Getting Swole is nice for battle, but outside that circumstance, it isn't really doing anything. Though, I guess it does give you something to do with all those Visas clones we keep running into. Just don't rely on it too much, or else your opponent is going to be running laps around you. Prime Planet Parisos is a field spell card, and when activated, you can add 1 Kashtira monster from your deck to your hand. While on the field, monsters you control gain 100 attack and defense for each different attribute among monsters on the field, not just your side, and if a Kashtira Shangri-Ira you control activates its effect, except during the damage step, you can target a card on the field and destroy it. So not only does your big satellite cause a lot of annoyances, you can actually start causing some damage with it too. I wouldn't be surprised to see this card become as popular as Fenrir, if only for the fact that it searches Fenrir and gives it a pretty nifty power bonus, though it's not so important that, if you play your own field spell, you won't feel bad for playing it over this one, which means it isn't exactly occupying any prime real estate. Kashtira Big Bang is a normal trap card, and if a Kashtira Xyz monster is on the field, make both players banish monsters from their field face down until they control only one. And if this card becomes banished, you can target a Kashtira Xyz monster you control and add a Kashtira monster you own attached to it to your hand, then you can special summon it from your hand. Guess they didn't want to introduce the idea of special summoning directly from Xyz material, huh? Oh well, more fun for the Digimon TCG, I suppose. With this, you can grab a free monster out from under your Shangri-Ira or the evolved Arise Heart, but the real draw is the activated effect, being a kind of evenly matched that lets you keep something on board. The downside is that it only works on monsters and there's no way to activate it from your hand, though of course you can't forget the wonders of Trap Trick. Heck, you can even use it to get both effects of Big Bang in a single turn, while giving you the flexibility to get any other normal trap as needed. So if you're outnumbered, remember to keep this card in mind, because it'll give you a big bang for your buck. Alright, that's all the Kashtira cards, but to make sure we cover all the Visas lore, let's cover some support cards for the surrounding themes. First, we have a little update to the Beastie Boys' Scareclaw Defang, a continuous spell card that keeps your Scareclaw Link monsters and Visas Starfrosts you control from being targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects. And monsters destroyed in battle by your Scareclaw Link monsters and Visas Starfrost are banished instead of going to the grave. It can also banish a Scareclaw Link monster from your field or grave, then target a card your opponent controls and destroy it. That last effect would be a lot stronger if we had a bevy of Link monsters to choose from. But at time of recording, we only have the Link 3, which we'd rather not put in that position, and the Link 1, which, to be fair, is fine to banish once we've used their once per duel effect. The protection is also a nice touch. Try Hard is already a huge menace, and having that kind of blanket protection pushes it over the edge. It'd be an incredibly based card if not for the fact that the boss is stealing away your big Buster Sword and the helpful Nendoroid that it's made out of. I hate when bosses have those mechanics. Tearlament's Pearl Regia is a field spell that, like its counterpart, gives fusion monsters and Tearlament's monsters you control 500 attack. And if any number of Aqua-type Tearlament's monsters are sent to your grave by a card effect, except during the damage step, you can send a level 4 or lower Aqua monster from your deck to the grave. But if the sent monster isn't a Tearlament's monster, you can't activate cards or the effects of cards with that name for the rest of the turn. This lets you get another Tearlament's fusion effect into rotation after you trigger the first one, but it does give you quite a bit of options to send with that effect. There are around 150 cards that fit that framework. And while we'll want to avoid ones that have effects that trigger into the grave because we'd have to skip on them, there are a few exceptions that are pretty funny. King of the Swamp, for instance, fits that bill. While you can't activate its effects, being a named material for any fusion that specifically lists that material is a continuous effect. This can also get a Shari Suship into rotation, because it not being able to activate effects doesn't mean anything to a normal monster. But if your effects do get stunned, don't worry about jumping right in. The water's fine. Trivikarma is a normal trap card that targets a Visas Starfrost you control and an effect monster your opponent controls. You negate that opponent's monster's effect, and if you do, your monster gains attack equal to half that monster's original attack and defense, whichever is higher, which is kind of an extension of Visas's on-board effect. You can also banish this card from your grave to add a spell or trap card that mentions Visas Starfrost, except a copy of this card, from your deck to your hand. But you can only use one effect per turn, and only once per turn. Not really a helpful card unless you play Visas, but if you're splashing them into your deck, or playing any combination of Scareclaw, Tear, or Kashtira, you'll want to have a little support for the card that ties it all together. And to be fair, a lot of cards that are good for the individual themes without Visas do mention them, so you could just play Foolish Burial Goods as a search card for those in particular. Just be careful about callously throwing cards into the grave, because karma always finds a way to get back at you. Alright, that's all of our new cards, and since we covered tech picks last time, let's get straight into the lore. Last we left off, Visas had arrived at a planet that is now being identified as the Scareclaw one, in search of another member of the Heart clones. Lightheart had been defeated and subsequently joined Visas, while Kaleidoheart was outright slain by Kit Kalos, freeing the Tearlaments. Upon returning to the Realm of Fear, Visas fought off the Kashtira minions, eventually drawing the attention of their boss. And Riseheart didn't show up alone, as Kashtira Unicorn returned from its excursion. While the timeline is a little muddy, we can see that the Kashtiras arrived either just as or after Visas left Pelreno, and engaged Kit Kalos, who had recently upgraded to rule Kalkos, in battle. But the power increase unfortunately didn't help, as Unicorn arrived with a canister containing the mermaid matron within. Now, at first I thought the canisters might be corrupting the inhabitants, turning them into their Kashtira forms, but I don't think that's entirely accurate. These Crimson Conquerors seem to go around extracting resources, so what if negative emotions could be harvested from subjects to create a labor force? That's not even that far-fetched. Like Scareclaw, the act of causing fear in others, their world is called Reichphobia, the realm of fear, and Tear Laments, their sadness giving way to tears of beautiful pearls. Even the TCG translation of Kshatriy law reveals more information, as Ira is Latin for anger. Fear, sadness, anger. 3 very potent, powerful, and dark emotions that are now being used against our protagonists. And to further this theory, we need look no further than Scareclaw Kashtira, as it looks like the lower half of Scareclaw Triheart. In its battle with Visas, the Interstellar Warriors seem to have won and purified them, creating Lightheart in the process. But what happened to the other half of Triheart? Well, it seems the Kashtira were making great use of it. Riseheart was not too pleased to see Visas cutting down their minions, so decided it was time to make a radical upgrade. The artwork of Kashtira Papyrus shows Riseheart absorbing some kind of green energy, which appears to come from the first world Parasos where Riseheart calls home. Trivikarma also shows Visas doing the same at a presumably later date, but for now, Riseheart then interfaces with one of the Kashtira canisters, using it to draw out their anger, looking to overlap himself with this copy, using the tendrils of their cosmic arm to make the connection. Notably, all the Heart monsters so far have had an extra deck form with 3000 attack, as well as defense where applicable, and Kashtira Overlap gives any of the base form monsters the power boost needed to match that. This process transforms Riseheart into their Ariseheart form, looking a lot more like the rest of the Kashtira. Visas pursues a Riseheart into the portal Riseheart had appeared in, and the two clash in Parasos, the 6th world. Eventually, Ariseheart reached out and absorbed Visas' blade, formed from the spirit of Lightheart, and so Visas was forced to do as Riseheart had done previously, drawing in the power of Parasos. However, instead of trying to exhume its power and control it from the outside like Riseheart had, Visas kept it within, causing their cosmic arm to swell with dark energy, throwing a punch that collided with Ariseheart's, bringing this chapter of the Visas storyline to a close. The name Big Bang is indicative of a whole new universe being born, but we won't know what the story has in store for us until the next chapter. However, there are some small tidbits I'd like to mention before we leave. One, it looks like we're actually going to get alternate forms of all the field spells, presumably how they are after the Kashtira influence has been removed. While we don't see this in the TCG translations, the OCG names translate to 4th World Destruction Reichphobia, 6th World Destruction Parasos, and 1st World Destruction Pelreno. But that one has now become the 1st world of the Graceful Ripple Songstresses. The numbers are also a pretty interesting note, and I think we've reached the most worlds we're going to see, with future sets exploring the 2nd, 3rd, and 5th worlds, and I'm basing this on the fact that all the worlds we have seen embody one of the 6 basic emotions. We've already seen fear, sadness, and anger, so we're due for worlds that focus on happiness, disgust, and surprise. There's also the Hindu connections that can be expanded upon from last episode, though I do need to make a correction. Last time I posited that a Brahmin-inspired archetype would be revealed to be the bosses of the Kashtira, based on a chart of the Hindu caste system I'd found while researching. But a few of you thankfully chimed in the comments and let me know that one didn't strictly have authority over the other. Brahmins were a higher class, but in regards to their duties, the Brahmins were focused on handling religious duties, while the Kashtira were in charge of military affairs. But with that cleared up, while I was trying to figure out what a papyrus was, I found a page that said that papyrus was often used as a proper name for a devil king in Buddhism, specifically of the 6th heaven of the world of desire, lining up pretty well with Parasos, the 6th world, associated with the Kashtira. Riseheart's Wikipedia article also notes that they may be a reference to Oda Nobunaga, one of the big huge feudal lords of the Warring States period of Japan. Not only are they wearing much more samurai-esque garb than any of the other hearts, Oda Nobunaga had a nickname as the Demon King of the 6th Heaven, so that's something. But that's kind of where my investigation runs cold. I wasn't able to find anything concrete. I tried looking up the 1st and 4th heavens of the World of Desire, but couldn't find anything that stood out to me as connecting them with Tear Laments or Scareclaw. So now, I'm calling on all of you with a special mission. Use this video as a jumping off point and see if you can find any more connections between what's presented here and Buddhism or Hinduism. Bonus points if those are subjects that you've really studied in. Then, whatever you find, share in the comments below so that we can all be scholars of Yu-Gi-Oh lore, because trust me, we could use a few more of those. And while you're there, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to show your support, ring that bell so you don't miss an episode, and share this video with someone you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode was brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander Harry, the ominous benefactor, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Adam Zajdel, Avi Chali, Kane Senpai, Cameron Berg, Cozy Boat 275, Eric, Frankie, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh!, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Ironic, John Manji, Julius Sneezer, Larakia, Mana Charge, Marluxia is a girl, Meteornus, Michael Madsen, Mighty Action X, Muzuki Clark, Neo Trinity, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Rem T Bright, RJ the Jank Monarch, Ruxith Sarani, Sophie, apparently, The Fresh Prince of Conair, The Wizard Moose, True Neutral, Xander Wolfensberger and Zyrus, Cosmic Crusaders Ariel Kersey, Bear Sharktopus Studios, Chaz Ghost, Chris Kessler, Corbinisms, Dallas Modeste, Emily, Eva Padilla, Howling Zangetsu, Herbal D, Jesus Garcia, Kale the Dragon, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lord Whoop-de-Doo, Manga Pages, Marion James E. Bacata, Matt Simmons, Nitromo, Sarah Lo Sulshi, Shaquille Solomon, Shooting Star 3300, Star-Lord 777, Super Purd, Tucker Ordorn and the Legendary Raven, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. I'm only able to continue doing this thanks to the support of these lovely people, so if you'd like to be a part of these credits, as well as help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, please check out my YouTube membership or Patreon links in the description to see if I have anything you'd like on offer. And if you'd like to catch up on the Vsauce lore, check out this playlist right here. And if you want to see two Yu-Gi-Tubers going at it, check out Noah Jenk and I's latest series Progression Polls, where your voice shapes the format. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.